What's going on, bottom line viewers? It's Mitch here, live for your NFL Divisional Round picks, preview, in-depth analysis on every single matchup. We are going to get down and dirty in every single one of these matchups from an X's and O's, from an analytical perspective, and break down all of these games on the offensive and defensive sides of the football. I've started this one a little bit later than usual. I wanted to get all of my notes from top to bottom sorted out perfectly. Typically throughout the season, I just come on here. I don't really have any notes. I just give you my thoughts on every matchup and game and pick it. But during the playoffs, I try to sort it out kind of in order and organize it so that it's all good to go and that I can give you all of the information that I feel I need to give you to break down these games and these matchups and make my picks to the best of my ability. So that's what I've done here, and I'm excited to share everything that I've thought of and everything I've concocted and everything that I've heard and read and put it all together into one big pot for you guys and for me to share. So before I give you my picks for divisional round, make sure that you do spike that like button. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more BLV just like this. And also spike that notification bell for the latest upload here on the channel. Alrighty. Thank you guys for joining. What's going on, people? Let's say hello to Natasha in the chat, the Greg, Cameron, Patrick, Ward. Yes, I always bring the A game, and you guys see I'm bringing the TB12. We're bringing the TB12 method here today with the picks. I don't know if that gives you a sense of maybe who I'm picking in a certain game. Lamb said, what's up, bro? Jimmy, Natasha again, Joe Black, sports fan, what's going on? Let me know who you're picking as we get through all of these games. Appreciate all of you who are here live. If you're watching this after the fact, that's cool as well. Just let me know what you think of these matchups in the comment section below. Mr. Peter, what's going on? Thanks for joining me. And let's kick it off. So for the comments, guys, I'll try to get to as many comments as possible for you and answer any of your questions. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to break down the game, and then I'm going to get to questions about that game. So let's say we're talking first game's going to be Cincinnati, Tennessee. I'm breaking the games down in order. So I'm going to break down Cincinnati, Tennessee, and then after I break it down and give you my pick, you guys let me know what you think and what your score is going to be, and if you have any questions about that game specifically, and if you super chat just as Cryptic Ninja did, I'm gonna get to you as soon as possible. Cryptic Ninja says, Mitch, I have returned. What's going on, Cryptic Ninja? Thank you for joining the chat, and thank you so much for the super chat, guys. If you do want to support me like Cryptic Ninja did, but maybe you're too shy, you don't want to be out there like Cryptic Ninja, you don't want to super chat, maybe you do want to become a YouTube member and you can get a nice little certified badge beside your name in the live chat. You could check that out on the desktop version for sure. There's a big join button and you can click that and become an exclusive member. I'm actually going to look to throw up, possibly if I can, at the very least, if I can't put it on there, I'm going to put it on my Patreon, and maybe I'll even throw it on both, but you can also support me on Patreon. That link is in the description. Starts at $3 a month. You get BLV versus Consensus. You get all of my bets every single week on Patreon. I'm going to throw my notes for these games out there as well for any of you guys that are just fans of the individual matchups and all of my thoughts on it. So I'll throw my notes in there as well for this video. All right. So let's start with this before we get to the games. Let's start with the overall themes of the week. So there is a little bit of the theme this week, and we typically see this at least once during the year's playoffs, and that is rematches. So in this case, in divisional round, we have 3 rematches out of the 4 games. 3 of them are rematches. In fact, 2 of them are rematches from the same week of the season, which was week 3 of this 2021 NFL season. we had another, which I believe was in week 5. So the Bucs and the Rams played in week 3, and they played in one of the biggest, most anticipated games of the year. And then on Sunday night, we saw the other NFC playoff game, which was the Niners and the Packers that same week 3. A couple weeks later, we witnessed the Bills and the Chiefs, the Bills getting revenge on the Chiefs for the AFC Championship game. The only game that is not a rematch is the Cincinnati Bengals, the Tennessee Titans, which is where we're going to start. Outside of that, guys, an interesting statistic here from Warren Sharp, which I love Warren Sharp's breakdowns of the games. If you don't follow him on Twitter, I highly recommend it. But he has a statistic called early down success rate. And in fact, we have 8 teams playing this weekend. And according to his stat, early down success rate, the 6 of the 8 teams have top 6 early down offenses in the league. The only 2 teams, again, are the 2 teams that aren't playing in the rematch, the Tennessee Titans and the Cincinnati Bengals. So the 2 teams facing in one game in particular are not overly successful on early downs on offense, but every single other team is great offensively, and that could be a theme if your team isn't in the playoffs to look out for in the future. Maybe you need a really good offense, especially on first and second down, to be successful in this league. Lastly, I think with the rematches comes the theme of saying, do not anticipate just because a team beat another team in week 3 or week 5 or whatever, that same team is going to do the exact same thing in this game this week. Because as you'll see in all of these matchups, as I went back to watch all of those games, study it, watch it twice even sometimes, and look at the stats and look at the snap percentages and look who was in the lineup and look who wasn't in the lineup, there is a lot that has changed, both from a player perspective, from a scheme perspective, from a coaching perspective. There is a lot that has changed from these matchups. It's one thing to say that a game would repeat itself if it was, let's say, in week 16. But all of these rematches actually happened in the first month or 2, just slightly, of the season. So don't anticipate the same result. And if it is the same result, I would probably expect a much closer result for these games because it is the playoffs and we're going to see the best from all of these teams. So let's get to the first matchup. And the first matchup is the Cincinnati Bengals and the Tennessee Titans. And as always, guys, I'm going to give you my pick straight up and versus the spread. So the spread this week is Titans favored by 3.5 points in Tennessee. Okay? So this was the only game that was not a rematch. Repeat, the only game that was not a rematch. Now, let's take a look at the tail of the tape and see how these teams match up. So, in terms of the tail of the tape, these teams statistically are probably the weakest out of any of these teams, statistically. This is not me claiming that the Bengals or the Titans are the weakest of the 8 teams. This is me simply saying when you look at offensive, defensive, yards per play metrics, points metrics, all of these things point towards these teams being the weakest of the 8 teams remaining in the playoffs, and they both play each other this week. So, offensively, I think throughout the season, a lot has changed for Tennessee in a good and a bad way in terms of, at moments, they've looked a lot better than they have in other moments due to a lot of injuries that they've sustained. The Bengals, for the most part, have really stayed healthy, but they are hitting their peak now in the playoffs, kind of figuring out their identity. Defensively, the Titans have stayed healthy for a majority of the time. The Bengals have recently dealt with more injuries than Tennessee, but Tennessee, for the large part, has been the better defense over the course of the season, especially when it comes to their run defense, which is one of the elite units in the NFL. And when it comes to the yards per play and points per drive metrics, and why I put that up there is because yards per play is a big metric when it comes to Las Vegas, how they create their odds and how people actually go about picking games and betting on games. And then I put points per drive because I believe points matter more than anything else. And personally, I think points per drive is a better indication of a team scoring points than points per game, just because it is a little bit more compressed. So the Bengals have been a better team in terms of points and in terms of yards. So let's take a look at this matchup from a schematical perspective, starting with the Tennessee defense versus the Bengals offense. So we spent a lot of time last week talking about the Raiders defense, their front four, and the ability for them to go toe-to-toe with Cincinnati and win the game for the Raiders, right? So a lot of time was spent on, and a big time point for why I expected that game to be really close, if not the Raiders to pull off the upset. I liked, maybe wrongly, the Raiders plus the 6 points, and it was really, really close, right? It was really close in the end. You know, the Raiders were at the 15-yard line, the 10-yard line. They had a throw to the end zone. It was intercepted. It was a one-play game either way, really. It felt like the Bengals comfortably kind of were in control of that game, in my opinion, doing the live stream, watching the game and all that. It felt like they were in control of the Raiders, but for the most part, you know, when you look at the end result, it was a one-play, won-the-game type of game at the end of the day. So when you center your conversation about this game, I think it begins once again with the Bengals offensive line taking on the Tennessee Titans front four. The Tennessee Titans front four, I would say, is less talented than the Raiders from an edge pass rush perspective, but more talented from an interior rush perspective. So whatever way you want to take that is for you to decide. Personally, I think the Titans are probably more well across the board. You know, I feel like the Raiders are a team that's maybe a little bit Max Crosby dependent, while I feel like the Titans are a little bit more balanced across their front four. Simmons is a beast, and Danico Autry's had a nice season for them. Also, Harold Landry's had his best season of his career. So they can provide pressure from the inside or the outside. The big difference for me between the two in the front four is the Tennessee Titans are a little bit more creative with how they utilize their front four. It's not just with the Raiders, a lot of the times they just send four, right? It's like pin your ears back, get to the quarterback, don't rely on run responsibilities, just go. Get uphill and play. And for me, Tennessee is a lot more, with Mike Vrabel being there, I don't want to say they're Patriot-like, but they're kind of like a little bit more run responsible, and they're also, I feel, a little bit more diverse and creative with how they send those four players. So a lot of times Tennessee will show that they're going to send 5 or send 6 or send 7, but ultimately they'll only send 4. And it could be a different 4 every time, but they're going to send 4. And a lot of the times the Titans get there with 4, and that's largely where they've been very, very good, is with their stunts, with looping guys around, you know, Landry coming inside, Simmons going to the outside, that sort of stuff where they are more successful, and that can be more disruptive for an offensive line a lot of the times, just in my opinion, than a defensive line simply saying, we have these 4 studs, and we're just going to send them at your quarterback. So in a way, the Titans, I think, are a little bit better, although maybe the metrics from a pass rushing perspective doesn't indicate that, and I think Max Crosby is definitely the best pass rusher that the Bengals have faced over the last 2 weeks, as he led the NFL in pressures. So there's no Max Crosby, but there's maybe a little bit more balance and more creativity. So when you look at that, I think that's where the way the Titans have to win defensively. I think if they can't get pressure, the Bengals are going to get a lot of successful throws in this game. Just when you look at it from a matchup perspective in the Titans secondary, they can't match up with Cincinnati. It just simply is not going to happen. You can't expect for Christian Fulton to cover Jamar Chase one-on-one as a man coverage player. And that's the thing that you also have to discuss with the Titans. They're primarily a zone coverage team. They don't play a lot of man coverage. They play a lot of zone coverage, and they basically say, we're going to play a lot of disguise, and then we're going to get to you with our front four before you can make a good decision. And that's how they cause mistakes, because maybe they show something with their defense and then they disguise it and it's something else, right? Maybe they show cover 3 and then they turn to cover 2, just as a simple example of that. While the Raiders are a lot different. So the Raiders, they basically, and we knew this coming in, right? The big breakdown was, how are the Bengals going to attack the cover 3 Gus Bradley system? And the Raiders play cover 3. That is what they do. Cover 3. Every play, almost. They'll mix it up a little bit, but it's like cover 3 with variations. With the Titans, it could be cover 6, it could be cover 2, it could be cover 4, it could be cover 3, but a majority of the time, it's going to be zone, right? So they're going to mix that up, and they're going to be a little bit more creative with how they do that. And they're going to be more creative in general with their defense. And this side of the ball to me comes down to, one, can the Bengals protect? If not, the Titans, can they take over? And then secondly, can Joe Burrow be right? When Joe Burrow is in the empty formation, as we see him all the time, he's got Jamar Chase over to the right, he's got T. Higgins to the left, he's got Tyler Boyd in the slot to the left, he's got Joe Mixon out there. When he's in the empty and CJ Uzomah at tight end, is he reading the coverage right? And is he getting to the right place with the football? One team that I saw do this very well was my Patriots, in fact, where Mac Jones, a very similar quarterback to Burrow. Burrow's a better version. Is able to read the defense and kind of pick that defense apart. The difference between these two teams is the Bengals have the better receivers and the Patriots have the better offensive line. So there's a little bit of differences there. But the Patriots largely had success throwing the ball versus Tennessee in those looks. While I feel like they didn't, really run very well. It was okay. But like the Bengals, I feel offensively, they've figured out what they are. They figured out what their theme is, what their go-to is, what they want to do. And they want to put the ball in Joe Burrow's right arm, and they want to throw the football, right? They're going to mix in the run a little bit here and there. They've got Joe Mixon, as they should. But Tennessee, their strength is playing the run game. I think that even more indicates that Joe Burrow is going to pass the ball probably 35 to 40 times in this game, and it's going to be up to him to read the coverages, make the right read, and his receivers to find the space in the zone and make those plays. So specifically on the early downs, can Burrow get it out quick, make the right read, and avoid 3rd and longs? If the Bengals are sitting in 3rd and long, or they decide to run the ball on 1st down every time, which I don't think is going to happen, but if they do, it's not going to be a good recipe for the Bengals to win this game, because obviously if you're in 3rd and 10, there's more time that you've got to look down the field for Tennessee's pass rush to get to you, and then ultimately you're going to lose. So can Burrow basically pull a Peyton Manning here and be right and make that read and make that play? Now, when we're talking about the Titans defense, this isn't one that is stellar, right? They're solid. They're smart. They're versatile in coverage. They've got talented players, but not like they're one of the best defenses in the NFL. We saw just a couple weeks ago a guy like Danny Amendola have a lot of success at like 35 years old, beating these corners down the field. So I think for the Bengals, they're going to have plenty of opportunity here, especially with guys like Tyler Boyd. And I love the way that the Bengals are able to move around Jamar Chase and find the matchup that they want. That was probably the thing that impressed me the most about Cincinnati's offense, was the ability to move Jamar Chase from the slot to the left, to the right, put him in motion, give him the ball on a handoff, and just find every opportunity, a lot of the same ways that the Packers use Davante Adams. We're going to just throw to this guy. Like Burrow is like Rodgers. We're just going to throw to this guy until you put 2 people on him, or until you can stop him. If you can't stop him, we're just going to keep throwing him the ball. So Tennessee is going to have to find different ways through their zone coverages to focusing coverage on Jamar Chase, because if that is one-on-one, Burrow is going to throw it, and most likely Chase is going to come down with it. So on that side of the ball, I think the Bengals will have a fair amount of success throwing the ball and moving the ball down the field. But because I don't think they're going to have a lot of success on the ground, and because of the lack of balance, I think there are opportunities here for the Titans to take the ball away or to sack the quarterback and create big plays that way. So the Bengals, I think, will get into the 20s, maybe even the low 30s, and have an opportunity to win this game. But if Joe Burrow makes a mistake, they could lose the game easily because of that mistake. Now, which I want to say and clarify, is far more likely to happen versus this defense than the Raiders defense, because the Raiders defense is so simple and the Titans defense is not. So there is, because we are human, let's not act like these guys are computers. Burrow could misread a play and throw it into coverage and therefore get picked off. Now, when you look at the other side of the football, the Bengals defense versus the Tennessee offense, I think really it comes down to, can the Bengals defense hang in there? Can they not get overpowered through the Titans running game? The Bengals will not have Larry Ogunjobi in this game, which I do think is a significant loss. He's been one of their two primary defensive tackles all season, alongside DJ Reader. DJ Reader's a good player. The Bengals have been fairly decent versus the run, but one thing I will say about that is that the Bengals, when they actually face good running attacks, are not very good. So when you look at the Bengals and they play top 15 rushing efficiency offenses, they have lost 5 out of the 6 meetings that they have played top 15 rushing attacks. So the only game that they actually won was versus Kansas City. And first, I wouldn't really regard Kansas City as a run-first team, even though they're efficient at doing so. And number 2, that was a weird comeback game. So there was even opportunity to lose that game. So in all of the games that they've played top 15 rushing offenses, this defense has had trouble, specifically when you look at, the Browns, for an example, which is pretty similar to Tennessee in that regard with Nick Chubb and their offensive line. So I think the Titans can find success, specifically running to the left of the defense in this game. That's where the Titans' primary strength is offensively on their offensive line. One thing that I think is interesting about this game is, can the Bengals in the secondary, maybe play a little bit riskier in the back end and try to put more numbers to the running game to slow down Derrick Henry? And I do think that that is going to be something that the Titans have to test early and often. I think the Titans should look at this game and say, yes, we'll probably have success running the ball, but I think we need to come out and remind people that we can throw the ball, right? Remind people that A.J. Brown exists. Remind people that Julio Jones exists. Remind people that we do have this passing attack down the field that can make plays. And we've seen the metrics that indicate that when A.J. Brown and Julio Jones are in the lineup, they're a much better passing offense. Ryan Tannehill's numbers go way up. The yards per attempt goes way up. The efficiency goes way up. So therefore, the Titans, don't be fooled by their overall grades, because it doesn't really indicate how good they can be throwing the ball. But that is to say that when they can run the ball, they can throw the ball. And I feel like they aren't a great drop back passing team. If you just ask the Titans to come out and throw all the time, they wouldn't be the best, but it is the threat of the run and the balance that they offer that often opens up their big plays. And just because the Bengals are going to be probably anticipating a run heavy script early in the game, they're going to have a lot of people up front, and that's going to allow the opportunity for the Titans to throw the ball down the field and get some big plays early in this game. Now, I do think the Bengals, it's probably going to be one of those games where the Bengals are going to allow, probably a few 20 to 30-yard runs, but they're also going to have a couple drives versus the Titans where they go the Titans go 3 and out. Like, they're going to have drives where the Titans go for 2-3 yards on first and second down, then they throw an incomplete pass, then they punt. Like, that's going to happen. There's also going to be drives where Derrick Henry or whoever's running the ball for the Titans goes for 20 to 30 yards apiece, and then they just steamroll their way into the end zone. So I feel like both of those things can happen. But when the Bengals get to those third down and let's say sixes, right? If they get to those 3rd and 6s, are they able to make the plays and slow down A.J. Brown? Because really, that's who Ryan Tannehill is going to look to on 3rd down. He always does. Every time, especially when he knows he has a good matchup. So the question is, do the Bengals, do they have the cornerbacks that are up to the task? And when you look at their personnel, they've got solid corners. I think better corners than, some teams we've seen played the Titans this year where that has been the case. I think they've probably got better corners than like a team like the Colts or a team like the Niners, but they're not one of the better teams in terms of having an elite corner to just put on A.J. Brown and worry about the running game. So that could become a problem. The Bengals, when they face these run-heavy teams, they're going to put Von Bell in the box. And then the question is, If Derrick Henry breaks through to the third level, is Jesse Bates going to make the tackle? And the question simply probably is no, just because Jesse Bates isn't a very good tackler. So I could see a couple big runs in this game from Tennessee. I could see a couple big passing plays, but I think it's going to be a lot of explosives and not a lot of efficiency from Tennessee, which is typically how their offense is. So overall, I think when you look at both sides of the football, the Titans have less holes on their team. They have less questions, less negatives, and the Bengals have more defined weaknesses. And even though I think Cincinnati has the better quarterback and the better wide receivers and the more, high-octane offense, I feel like Cincinnati has a chance to pull it off if we get a Joe Burrow A game. But if Joe Burrow is even at a B+, I think this favors the Titans to win because I think they're the better overall team on the offensive line, on the defensive line, and then what they can do in terms of coaching their defense up to slow down the Bengals, and then offensively to run the ball when they get ahead. I also think a major factor here is I believe that teams need to experience defeat most of the time before they can be largely successful in the playoffs. And I think Cincinnati is a team that they won a game versus a Raiders team that, let's be honest, is not super talented, although they're a great story. The Titans are a step up in class, and I just don't think the Bengals are there yet. And I think that they just don't have enough or have that playoff experience to take it to a team like Tennessee, who's been there. They've done that. They've won these games. They know what it's like. They know how to raise their intensity. Now, if Cincinnati can get ahead early and jump on a team coming off a bye, then they've got a really good chance, because I feel like the more you take the Titans off of the run game, then you've got a better chance to win. So Cincinnati's got a shot to win the game, but they're definitely an underdog for a reason. So I'm going to take the Titans to win 31-24. I think it's going to be a pretty exciting football game. This is the one that I probably, have the least feel for in terms of the individual matchups, because of they didn't play earlier in the year. So there's a lot of unfamiliarity for both sides. But the way I see it is Tennessee most times wins this game, most times covers this game, especially at home. So I'll take the Titans to win, and I'll take the Titans to cover. All right. So moving to the second game on Saturday, and both number 1 seeds play on the same day. Guys, if you haven't already, make sure that you do Gronk, Spike, the like button. I find it really interesting how the NFL scheduled this, and I know that they typically do this, but I find that the Sunday games are a lot more entertaining and a lot more interesting. I do think the Packers and Niners is a really interesting game, but I think the Rams and the Bucks is, to me, the one that I'm looking forward to the most, and that's just, I guess, because I like the Bucks. But then also the Bills and the Chiefs is also a super fascinating game. So let's take a look at the San Francisco 49ers and the Green Bay Packers. But before we do, I did promise that I'd get to your questions and your scores. So before we get to Green Bay -6 and where I'm leaning for that game, let me know your questions or your comments for the Bengals and the Titans. I see Ultra says that I love Burrow. I think he's a top 5 quarterback, but the O-line versus D-line matchup is too much to handle. The Titans win 27-17. Though, as Mitch said, he maybe, As Mitch would say, maybe I'm being cocky. Cameron says, what do you think Derrick Henry's specific workload is going to be? I think they're going to still use a lot of Foreman, I feel like, because he's played really well. So I would expect probably 10 to 15 carries for Derrick Henry and then another 10 for Foreman. They're going to run the ball a lot, but I don't see really a reason why you should ask Derrick Henry to run the ball 30 times. I think Foreman is a good player and has proven that he is probably worthy of getting touches. So with Derrick Henry not being 100% or being potentially a little bit rusty, you want to keep that guy fresh, right? Especially for the end of the game. Natasha says she thinks the Titans win. Very nice. What else we got? Any other comments about this game? I know I saw a couple people predict the score. LA says Bengals got saved by the refs. LA says I like the Titans to win by at least 7. We've got Harry here who has the Titans 30 to Bengals 20. What's the path to a Bengals win? I kind of brought it up, but I feel like it's just Joe Burrow being right, Joe Burrow being a stud, making the right decisions, quickly getting the ball out on early downs, avoiding 3rd and longs, and then making the right decisions and just being special and being the better quarterback, which is very reasonable. And then starting fast, I think, is huge. Because I think if the Bengals can avoid playing this, like, in the phone booth, like, run-heavy approach from the Titans and put Tannehill in a lot of situations where he's having to pass, I think that is definitely way more advantageous for the way that the Bengals are built, because I do think the Bengals can rush the passer, fairly well. I do think the Bengals, from like a secondary perspective, are solid, and even though their pass defense isn't phenomenal, I think they don't match up poorly with the Titans. Guys like Jesse Bates don't exactly want to be playing in the run game all day, so they'd rather be playing deep safety and taking away and picking passes off and things like that, and that's just generally where the Titans struggle. The more Tannehill throws, the more likely, like a team, like I'm going to talk about the Rams, I feel, or like even the Niners. These teams all, I feel like, really rely on efficiency through the passing game and not exactly volume. So I think that is a possible way that the Bengals can win the game. And Jamar Chase just going nuclear again, which is possible. Okay, so let's get to the next game, which is the San Francisco 49ers and the Green Bay Packers. Packers favored by 6, which I saw this line probably move the most of any of them this week. I think that had to do with the possible Jimmy Garoppolo rumors of him not being 100% and him having to deal with a thumb injury and a shoulder injury and all this stuff. Personally, we'll talk about it a little bit. I'm not really buying it. I think he'll be fine come when he plays. He looked good versus Dallas. I thought he played a fairly solid game until the interception, really, and the miss to Brandon Ayuk. But I didn't really see anything different from him other than what we usually see. I think he's fine. So personally, I'm not buying into that line movement. And I think the line movement, and we're going to get into the reasons why, I just think it's a lot of points. We're going to talk about it. It's a lot of points. Understandably, this is the number 1 seed, the team that's at the top of every power ranking, but this is a difficult matchup for the Green Bay Packers. Now let's take a look deeper into the matchup here between the 49ers and the Packers. So, the tail of the tape. The Green Bay Packers have the number 2 offense, according to DVOA. We haven't seen much variation in terms of their offense. If anything in this game, they should be back closer to 100%, but they've been 100% for most of the year outside of David Bakhtiari, which would be the addition that we will see in this game. I don't know how healthy he is, but he'll be playing in the game. Number 5 offense for the Niners. The interesting thing we're going to talk about with this game is the Niners offensively in the first matchup had success, but weren't nearly the offense that they are today, which I think is really, really interesting. But they are number 5 on the season, and that shows in their net yards per play, where they're actually significantly better than the Packers, which shows that they're a more balanced football team on offense and defense, and a more dominant team when they win the game. Number 7 defense, number 22 defense for the Packers, which is probably their weakness overall. Specifically, we'll get into the running defense of the Packers. And then the points per drive, I think it just shows the greatness of Aaron Rodgers, the efficiency of Aaron Rodgers, the fact that they're a team that doesn't really turn the ball over, and that they turn the ball over on their side of the defensive side. So that's why probably the points per drive is a little bit better in their favor. But as you can see, the Niners statistically are probably the stronger team. So the Packers have likely the MVP here and the number 1 seed, the home field. But statistics would show that this is a very even game. And so when I go back to the 6-point spread, Green Bay -6 feels like a lot of points to me. So let's break down this game. And when we talk about all the rematches, I'm going to spend probably significantly more time with the rematches, especially the Rams-Bucks game. But when we look at the rematches, I'm going to talk about the first game and what's different now and what happened in that game a little bit, and kind of give you a good feel for like what is different, what is new, and what is going to impact this game. So I will say this right off the top for this game. The Packers have been to the NFC Championship the last 2 seasons, right? They went to the NFC Championship. They hosted it versus the Bucs last year. They lost. They went to the 49ers 2 years ago and lost, okay? And that game was in San Francisco. This is the best opponent that the Packers have played in the divisional round over the past 3 years. When you look at who they've played in the divisional round the last 3 years, they've played the Seattle Seahawks, who are largely just Russell Wilson, and last year they played the Jared Goff Rams. So this is the best 49ers, or this is the best team that the Packers have played in this round over the last 2 seasons in the playoffs. So that means I feel it's going to be a closer game than those last 2 matchups, which, you know, when you look at the Rams game, when you look at the Seahawks game, those games were a little bit more like Packers kind of coasted to those wins, especially the Rams game. So now dating back to the first game, which was in week 3, again, week 3, long time ago. The game was in San Francisco, nice weather, primetime game, Sunday Night Football. 30-28 final score for the Green Bay Packers. You might remember that the 49ers scored with about 37 seconds left in the game, and I think incorrectly scored. I think Kyle Juszczyk should have fell down at the 1-yard line. That's just my opinion. But he didn't. He ended up going into the end zone. Then Aaron Rodgers got the ball, then went down, set up Mason Crosby for the game-winning kick. 30-28, the Packers won the game, with the final seconds being that field goal attempt for Mason Crosby. In that game, the Green Bay Packers led 17-0 at one point. Now, it is important to note that the 49ers are probably more different than the Packers are, and we're going to talk about specifically personnel here in a second, but 49ers defense has grown exponentially. I think back to that game when I watched it, the 49ers, they played more man than I remember them playing in any game all season long. They just don't play man anymore. Like they just don't. Their offense is completely different. They were like a short passing game, like quick passing game at that point. Brandon Ayuk was in the doghouse. Deebo Samuel, just to know how different the offense was, Deebo Samuel didn't have a rushing attempt. Like, that's how different the offense is. Like, Deebo Samuel wasn't a running back at that point. And also, the Niners were just struggling offensively for the most part. They didn't play well versus the Eagles the week before. They won 13-6 or something weird. So the Niners offensively just weren't playing well at that point at all. And they're way different now, obviously. There was also in that game a funky play where Jimmy Garoppolo, you might remember this. This is more for fun than anything else. It's not really a point. But Jimmy Garoppolo, threw the ball backwards, which was his crazy Jimmy Garoppolo play. He, threw the ball backwards, which ended up being a fumble. The Packers ended up getting a field goal on that drive. But I don't know if you remember the play. Go back if you want to see it. He, throws the ball behind him like this, and it ends up being a fumble, and the Packers get it. But that was a weird play. Now, A major difference for the 49ers in this game is their cornerback position. So they were heavily injured at this point already in week 3 at the cornerback position. So their week 3 cornerback position or group consisted of Emmanuel Moseley, who is still their number 1 cornerback, played 100% of the snaps in that game and pretty much plays 100% of the snaps last week as well. They had a guy named Lenore, who doesn't play anymore. He played 71% of the snaps versus the 49ers. I believe he's a rookie, late round pick. He had to start in that game. He played 71% of the snaps in that game in week 3. Josh Norman played 48% of the snaps, and Johnson played 32%. So those were their top 4 corners. Right now for the 49ers, Emmanuel Moseley still plays 100%. They've got a kid named Ambry Thomas, who's a rookie, plays 100% of the snaps now, so he's replaced Lenore as their other perimeter cornerback. He played 100% of the snaps versus Dallas. Kwan Williams did not play in that game. He's their nickel corner. You might know that. He's 86% of the snaps. So the Niners have 2 of their top 3 corners in this game that they did not have in week 3. So that's very important because Aaron Rodgers is on the other team, obviously, and Devontae Adams is on the other team. Another interesting personnel note is that Arden Key only played 3 snaps in that game, and he is a primary player a lot of the time for the 49ers, at least a sub rusher. Now, there's no more Robert Tonyan for the Green Bay Packers. Trey Sermon played running back for the 49ers in that game. You might not even know who that is because he's doesn't even exist anymore for the 49ers. He had 10 rushes for 31 yards and a touchdown, so there was no Elijah Mitchell. He was hurt, so he'll be in this game, obviously, starting at running back for the 49ers. Jair Alexander, who was hurt for a majority of the year, played in week 3. He actually had an interception in that game. And the one weird thing about the Packers was their offensive line, which was completely weird. They had a couple injuries. So they didn't have Bakhtiari, obviously, but they also had a line that was kind of makeshift, right? And the 49ers weren't really able to get much pressure even versus this makeshift line. But it is important to note that they had pluses and minuses for this line. So now they have Lucas, the guard, playing in the lineup, Bakhtiari in, and Kelly in at right tackle. They used to have Myers, the high draft pick, at center. He played in that game, will not play in this game. He's hurt. And then Turner, Billy Turner, who played in that game, who's not playing in this game. So there was a makeshift line for that game. I would say the offensive line now is much better from a name recognition perspective, although that line this week has not really played together very much because Bakhtiari's been hurt all year. So that is something, and definitely kind of interesting. So the Packers should be better on the O-line, but the Niners are better in the secondary. And also for the Packers, A.J. Dillon only was playing 29% of the snaps at that point. He is probably going to see 60, 50 even, that around that range percent of the snaps, especially in the cold, I would expect. From an injury front, we talked about Jimmy Garoppolo. We talked about David Bakhtiari. Alexander should be in the lineup for the Packers as far as I know. And then Whitney Merciless is also a player that they picked up later in the season. Should definitely be in the lineup this week. Now, let's talk about the Packers offense versus the 49ers defense. The 49ers are really, really good at one thing. We talked about this, actually 2 things. We talked about this versus the Dallas Cowboys. They're really good versus the run. They're number 2 DVOA defense versus the run. Packers probably won't have too much success if they are trying to run the ball a ton in this game. The 49ers have done a very good job at that continued versus Dallas. The other thing they're excellent at is defending quick screen passes. The 49ers are the number 1 defense defending screen passes. I think this is very important because the Packers are a team that love RPOs. They love these little makeshift screens. They love the ability for Rodgers to just throw the ball quick and get easy yak, right? We see that a ton. If you watch the Packers, you understand that. And the Niners, because of their speed at linebacker, are really good at sniffing that out and making plays. So that's something that I don't think will be as successful for the Packers. I think for the Packers to be successful on offense, Rodgers is going to have to be the guy, and he's going to have to, like I said last week, it's not too complicated. They're going to have to look at these one-on-ones on the outside. They're going to have to throw the ball outside the numbers. Rodgers is going to have to throw the ball vertically because you can attack the 49ers on the perimeter at cornerback. You can throw the ball deep. You can test these corners. You can throw outside the numbers. You can throw outs. You can throw comebacks. You could throw the curl routes. You could do all that. Dak Prescott wasn't willing to do that. I said that last week. He wasn't going to do it. He didn't do it. Aaron Rodgers will. As we saw in the first game, he targeted Davante Adams, guys. Get this. The most targets all season. And this is partly because they played a kid named Lenore. But anyways, he was targeted 18 times, okay, in this game in week 3. He had 12 catches for 132 yards and a touchdown. And I have in my notes, they need more of this. Target Davante Adams 18 more times in this game if you can. Now, I think they'll be able to find different ways to get him in the matchups that they like because the 49ers are not a team that are going to match up a certain corner with a certain wide receiver. If it was me, I'd probably not put him across from Mosley because I think that's the 49ers' best corner. So I would try to attack everybody else, everywhere else on the field. For the 49ers, it's just going to be about smashing Davante Adams when he gets the ball, making him feel the contact. And that's something that the 49ers have been very, very good at. They've played Cooper Kupp 2 times this year. Cooper Kupp has not been that effective, despite him being extremely effective versus every other team. You know, we looked at these matchups, and I think part of that is because they're going to make you feel these hits over the middle of the field when you catch the ball. So they're going to have to live with some Davante Adams completions. But I will say that I don't think it's going to be as easy as the first game because I do think the personnel for the 49ers is better. On top of, the 49ers have added some wrinkles to their defense with DeMeco Ryans, where they will play more cover 2. So they will, in a sense, double team a receiver if they feel threatened down the field. So if you're just constantly beating them over the top, they will adjust, and DeMeco Ryans will play more cover 2 to the point where you're not going to be able to just throw sideline fades to Davante Adams. It's going to be more like you're going to have to complete short passes with him and move it that way if they sense that they're threatened. But I think there could be opportunities for guys like Valdez-Scantling, who was rarely used in that game. Alan Lazard was rarely used in that game. Randall Cobb wasn't used really in that game. Those guys could all maybe have more opportunities, especially Valdez-Scantling, for maybe 1 or 2 game-changing plays down the field if they do put those cover 2 safeties up top on Adams and things like that. So that is definitely interesting. If the 49ers do go to too high, the question is, because the Packers love to run the ball, guys. Don't mistake it. The Packers don't love putting Aaron Rodgers in 45 pass attempts. They're not like the Bucs, right? The Bucs will say, Tom Brady, throw the ball 55 times. 45 times, right? The Packers want to be able to run the ball at least 15 times. But the question is, will they be able to do it when the 49ers are going light boxes? Because the 49ers are going to go light box. They're going to try to defend Davante Adams. They're going to try to defend the passing game. The question is, can they do it? I'm not sure that they can. They might be able to. It's going to be tough. They might be able to. I think the biggest way that the Packers can attack the Niners is use Lambeau Field to your advantage. And what I mean by that is use tempo. Like, go quick, use no huddle. You know, Rodgers' infamous snap count, his dummy snap count, where he tries to get these guys coming off sides and throwing the ball deep and all that stuff for a free play. That's how you wear down this defensive line. How are you going to beat the 49ers? You're going to wear down the defensive line. And once that pass rush isn't as effective, you're going to be able to have all the time in the world and find your receivers versus this zone coverage, right? So I think that for Rodgers, the ultimate weapon here is using the home field, using the tempo, using the dummy snap count, using these things to his advantage. and then being able to attack the 49ers that way. So I think it's going to be really interesting on that side of the ball to see how the 49ers combat Davante Adams. They don't have a one-on-one solution for him, which really nobody does. But they are definitely more sound, better on defense than they were in week 3, and there's no question about that. It's just a matter of, are they good enough to stop Aaron Rodgers? Now, on the other side of the ball, this is where it gets really interesting, and I feel like the game is going to be won and lost for either side. So this is my game plan for the 49ers. Run, and run some more, okay? This is the San Francisco 49ers. How did the 49ers beat the Packers 2 years ago in the NFC Championship? They ran, and Jimmy Garoppolo didn't have to touch the ball, okay? And if Jimmy Garoppolo truly is hurt, that is how you have to win this game. I don't think he is. Again, I'm going to say this again. I don't think he is hurt. But if he is, and it's going to be cold, right? Jimmy, I will say, is from New England, right? So he should be used to some sort of cold weather. He shouldn't be that impacted by it. But run some more, okay? And Shanahan is different, too, in the running game. Specifically this year, we know Shanahan, he's the best run coordinator in the game. I don't think it's close. But when you look at his running game over the years, it's majority of the time it's been inside and outside zone, right? We always think of like Gary Kubiak and Shanahan. It's inside, it's outside zone. Well, for Shanahan now, they're using a lot more like toss crack plays and things like that. So they'll like set up a toss play, but then they'll cut it back inside. You'll see that a lot with Deebo Samuel. Or they'll get you so far to the outside, they cut that back inside, or they'll get you to the inside and get you to the outside, right? And go to the outside. So it's less inside and outside zone, although they'll still do that. And it's more of these toss, like creative toss plays. And when you watch the Niners, it's clear by the eye, the human eye. Like, you don't even have to know anything about football. You could compare the 49ers running game just by watching them to anybody else, and you would probably say, yeah, that's pretty cool, just from what it looks like. I think the key for the Packers is their interior defensive line and their linebackers, which is definitely their weakness on defense, right? The Packers' strengths are their pass rushers. They've got good safeties. They've got good corners. They're good in pass defense. They want to play lighter personnel. They want to be able to defend the pass. And their linebackers, Devondre Campbell is had a good year, but these guys aren't like Dante Hightowers, right? They're not like coming down, fitting in the run and like coming down and slamming the guard into the dirt and all that stuff. So they're not really like that type of team. So the Niners could potentially have some push in that regard. We look back at the Browns game, how they almost beat the Packers. We look back at the Vikings game, how they were able to beat the Packers, and in the years past as well. It wasn't so much about stopping Aaron Rodgers. It was more possessing the ball and actually scoring when you've got the opportunity. And all of those teams have been able to do it by running the ball and possessing the ball and keeping Aaron Rodgers on the sidelines and chewing the clock, shortening the game, and essentially doing the New England Patriot versus Peyton Manning strategy, right, over the years. Now, something interesting that I found from Warren Sharp as well is that in the first matchup, the Niners, again, this speaks to how different they are, were 73% of the time pass on early downs, which is totally not the case now. And when we look at the Packers on early downs against the run, they're actually pretty good on first down, but they struggle mightily on second down. So maybe that has to do with the personnel that's on the field when they go to second down as opposed to first down. I'm not quite sure about that. I don't have that in-depth of statistics here, but I do feel like the Niners, when they run the ball, they've got to stay with it. Maybe you'll get 2 yards on first down, but there's the opportunity to get 6 to 8 yards on that second down run that maybe you might not get on first down. I think in third down situations where it's third and those sort of situations. That's not where the 49ers want to be, obviously. I think the Packers have shown a capacity to be very creative with their pass rush. They're very good off the edge, and they gave the Niners a lot of difficulties blocking them in that first game in those situations, right? It wasn't until the second half where really the Niners were able to move the ball in that way. And when you play the Niners passing game, you've got to just crowd the middle of the field and just say, Jimmy, throw the ball outside the numbers, because he has troubles doing that, and he has troubles throwing the ball down the field. He's not very good in that capacity. He's good underneath. He's really good in the middle of the field, and he's really good from basically 5 to 15 yards. He's not great 20-plus yards. He's not great on the outside, and that's not really where Shanahan schemes up his offense for the passing game. So that is where the Packers, and when you see them play pass defense, they're probably going to focus on taking away the middle of the field, especially in those situations. Now, big question for me, personnel and matchup-wise, is will Alexander match up with Deebo Samuel? I don't think so. They don't really do that. I don't think Alexander is going to move to the slot, which is where Deebo Samuel is a lot of the times. Plus, Deebo will be in the backfield, he'll be on the right, he'll be on the left, he'll motion from the right to the left, he'll be in the slot. There's too many ways to attack you that way. So, Kyle's going to find ways where he's not on Alexander. Most of the time, you might see Alexander on Brandon Ayuk. And I think George Kittle is really the guy where I feel like he's going to give a lot of trouble for the Packers. He did in the first game. And I feel like the Packers are not very good versus tight ends, especially guys with size. They struggled a lot versus Mark Andrews, and they don't really have the guys to stop tight ends. Their safeties are fast, but they're small, and their linebackers are not exactly athletic. So I think just generally, George Kittle in one-on-ones should have a lot of success, and that's the guy that I think is going to have perhaps the biggest game of anybody for the 49ers when they pass. So overall, guys, this is going to be a great game. I think it's going to be an either way type of game. Could come down to the last possession ultimately. And I could see either team winning. I could see really a lot of different game scripts for this one. I think that the 49ers, they're definitely a difficult matchup for the Packers. And honestly, I look at these divisional matchups and I think that both of the teams, the 1 and the 2 seed, if it was the Packers, I think they would have preferred to play the Rams, and I think the Bucs would have preferred to play the Niners, just on how they play and how they match up. And as we know, this is a matchup league. The question for me is, the Niners are physical. Are the Packers going to be ready for that type of physicality? Can they match it? And couple other questions. Is Devontae Adams just going to be too unstoppable for the Niners? Is the Jimmy G mistake, will it happen? When will it happen? Will it be a backbreaker? And then final question is, can the Niners get the lead? Because I think if they get the lead, they're going to win the game. If they get up 10-0, I think there's a very large chance. If they jump out like they did versus the Cowboys, very good chance they win. And the reason I say that is because they're so good at running the ball, and the Packers' deficiency is stopping the run. And even though Aaron Rodgers is on the other side, I just don't know if there'll be enough leverage for him to come back. We saw in the first game, the Niners fell behind 17-0 and fought their way back. That's not where they want to be, and they still competed in that game. So at the beginning of the playoffs, guys, I predicted this matchup to happen. And the funny thing is, I predicted both of these NFC matchups to happen, actually, before the year even started in the divisional round, which I feel good about. I might even throw that on Instagram just because I feel so good about it. But I'm going to stick with my prediction because I don't have any reason to change. I think ultimately this game is going to be awesome, but I'm going to go with the upset, guys. I am going to go with the upset. I'm going to go 27-23 for the 49ers. I could be totally wrong. And this might be the Packers' year to do it, and I think it might be. But I think the 49ers are a really tough team to play if you're the Packers. And over the years, Kyle Shanahan has kind of had the one up on Matt LaFleur. I feel like he has a good feel for what Matt LaFleur is trying to do on offense. Obviously, he basically created his offense. So I think it's going to be really, really, really fun. And as long as Jimmy Garoppolo is good to go, as long as Jimmy Garoppolo doesn't turn the ball over multiple times, I think the 49ers are going to win the game. So I might be an outlier here, but you guys let me know what you think. Who do you got winning the game? I've got the Niners 27-23. I think they're going to take a lead. I think the Packers are going to start out a little slow. I think the bye week, I've seen a lot of teams come out sluggish through the bye week. This could be a factor. They're going to be rested, but are they going to be ready to play at that intensity? I'm not sure. If the Niners take that lead, I think the Packers fight back, but just ultimately don't have enough. And the Niners move to the NFC Championship and pull off the epic upset. So that's what I got. So obviously, I like the Niners plus the 6. Not as confident about them winning the game, but I do feel very good about them getting 6 points. All right. So let me know what you guys think about that one. What your score is going to be. Ultra says, I think more of the matchups favor the Niners. Ultimately, though, I think the added week of rest and home field is worth a possession. I think that might be the difference. He's got Green Bay 30-27. Afix has got the Niners 30-24. Isaac says, props on you, Mitch, for picking a very unpopular upset. Appreciate that. I mean, I'm not just picking it because and I'm going to be honest, I want it to happen. I like the Niners. You guys know this. I always cheer for Kyle Shanahan. But I think it very well can happen. I think it is very realistic. I think, again, I'm not just doing this because I would prefer it to happen or I hate the Packers. People are just saying you hate the Packers. I don't hate the Packers. It has nothing to do with the Packers. I think the Niners are really good. I said the Niners would beat the Cowboys. I predicted the Niners go to the NFC Championship before the playoffs started. I predicted the Niners to go to the NFC Championship before the season started. So, from what I've seen from them, I think they're a good team. I think they'll get to the NFC Championship. All right. Memorabilia says the Packers will roll. Bozo will play. I would be shocked if he doesn't. Okay. Let's get to Sunday. All right. Here it is. This game, I have got so many notes. It's like I could write an essay on this game. It is unbelievable, bro. So I got the Los Angeles Rams and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Tampa Bay has been favored by 3 all week. This line has not changed at all. Like, at all. It's been -3 like all week. And actually, the only real change to it is that it's -3 plus money. So the Bucs do have, if you want to lay the Bucs, you are laying the Bucs at advantageous position. Okay. Natasha says, hi, Mitch. What's up, Natasha? How you doing? Thank you for the support. All right. Give me your scores after. I got to break this game down. It might take an hour. All right. Let's take a look at the tail of the tape. So, obviously, we know a lot has changed for these two teams, and these analytics don't always line up. But when we look at the offenses, Tampa has had the number 1 offense this year. And so far, even with the injuries, they have managed to put up 30-plus points in a lot of games. Rams, on the other hand, number 8. Defensively, Bucs number 9 and Rams number 5. Now, I would say, as far as what I've seen in recent weeks, both of these defenses are playing like top 3 units in the NFL. I think the Bucs defense is a lot better than their 9th ranking due to the fact that they haven't had their players for a majority of the season, specifically in the secondary. When we look at the net yards per play and net yards per drive, very even. Number three for the Bucs, number four for the Rams. So both are very good teams. All of their rankings are inside the top 10. Not much that can really dictate where we're going to go with this one based on the tail of its tape. Okay, so let's go back to week 3, which I said, again, same week as the Packers and the Niners, which is very weird. But it was, okay? General note for this game is that this is the one game this week that is actually somewhat impacted by travel and also time. So the Rams are obviously a West Coast team, and they're traveling the furthest distance of any other team on the road this week. The Rams are traveling from basically the west of the United States to Florida, which is exactly the opposite. So it's the furthest you could almost travel in this case. And also, they played on a short week on Monday. They're going to be asked to play on a Sunday, okay? So that is the biggest factor. I didn't bring that up with any other game. I won't bring that up with the Chiefs and Bills because the other games aren't really impacted by it. This is the only game that is really impacted by travel or by time and preparation, okay? So, the first game, the Rams defeated the Buccaneers 34-24 in week 3. Both quarterbacks were lights out, and the story of the game was that Matthew Stafford outdueled Tom Brady with 343 yards, 3 touchdowns, a 134 passer rating. In that game, Tom Brady had 432 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 passing, 1 rushing, and a 103 passer rating. Now, in terms of what I remember and when I went back to watch it, what are my takeaways? The early season game really meant a lot for the Rams, so much so that they were hyping it up as a measuring stick game. I remember Troy Aikman and Joe Buck bringing that up multiple times on the broadcast, and you could tell this by Sean McVay literally fist pumping until he crapped himself after Ryan Suckup missed a field goal before halftime, and McVay was like going insane at that time, which he's done a couple times this season. I remember he like literally went to the end zone celebrating a touchdown versus the 49ers. So McVay has his moments. But also, that was a game where the Rams won and then immediately were billed as the best team in the NFL and then lost the week after to the Cardinals. Then we had the Bucs, who were very sloppy at this point in the season and also very sloppy in this game. They had self-inflicted errors all over the field. 7 penalties on offense in this game, and the Rams had 1 penalty for 4 yards. Then we have to talk about, obviously, the home field, which is now in Tampa Bay, and then it was in LA. Very loud, very rowdy. Obviously, this was a big game feel, which is what I thought was really interesting and fascinating about the first game, which has felt like a playoff game in a lot of different ways. So now when we look at the personnel, for the Rams, defensively, they do not have Sebastian Joseph Day on the defensive line. They did in that game. He's the big defensive nose tackle that stuffs the run for the Rams, and they've been a good run defense without him, but they're better with him on the D-line. He's a good player. They have Greg Gaines, who plays for him, and A'Shawn Robinson plays more as well without him there. They also added Von Miller to the edge position, and that has only improved their defensive line. Safety-wise, they don't have Fuller, and they don't have potentially Rapp. So Fuller is out, who is their starting free safety all year, and Rapp's their starting strong safety. He could also be out with a concussion. That is questionable. There is no Kenny Young playing in this game. Kenny Young had 10 tackles, 1 sack, 3 tackles for loss, 1 quarterback hit in that game. So he was absolutely phenomenal. He ended up getting traded to the Broncos somewhere mid-season. Offensively, they lost Robert Woods, who played in this game. They lost Deshaun Jackson, who played in this game. Deshaun Jackson had 3 catches for 120 yards and a touchdown, but they did add Odell Beckham Jr. So Odell in, Woods and Djax out. Rams added Cam Akers and don't really use Darrell Henderson anymore, but Henderson didn't play in this game in week 3. It was all Sony Michel, which is actually something that is actually carryover because Sony Michel is the primary ball carrier now for the Rams. Also, just a general note, the Rams were much more pass heavy at that point in the season than they are now. For the Bucs, offensively, no Chris Godwin now. They had him in the game. He had about 70 yards on like 6 or 7 catches. They added Perryman, who wasn't on the team back then, and Cyril Grayson will have a role if he suits up. He might not play, though, so that might not be impactful at all. Antonio Brown, a lot of people are talking about this game and saying that the Bucs don't have Godwin or Antonio Brown. Antonio Brown didn't play in the first game. Just a heads up. Because a lot of people are talking about this game from the mainstream perspective and saying, like, oh, the Bucs don't have Godwin or Antonio Brown. Antonio Brown didn't play in the first game. Just a heads up on that one. Rob Gronkowski got hurt in this game. He broke his ribs in the first time they played. So they didn't have AB, and Gronk was playing with broken ribs in about the third quarter. And when he got hurt, there was 11 minutes left in the third quarter, and it was 21-14. So it was a close game. He ended up getting hurt in that game and missing multiple weeks. He's now back and playing pretty well. Defensively for Tampa Bay, they were missing Sean Murphy-Bunting, their nickel corner, who got hurt versus the Cowboys in the first half of the first game. They were missing Jason Pierre-Paul at the edge position, who also starts for them. And Jamel Dean played 12 snaps in that game. In the first 2 series of the game, the Rams had 17 yards and went 3 and out both times with Jamel Dean in the game. Jamel Dean left the game, and then the Bucs proceeded to get absolutely shredded for the rest of the game. So 2 consecutive 3 and outs with Dean in the game, and he also dropped an interception on the second series that would have probably been a pick 6. Also in that game, I think this is very similar to the Chiefs game, which we're going to talk about later. The Bucs were just generally very unlucky in this game because they dealt with injuries on offense, they dealt with injuries on defense. They caused a fumble by Higbee that got recovered by the Rams. They missed a field goal. They shanked a punt, which gave the ball to the Rams at the 30-yard line. Gronk dropped a touchdown in the end zone. They failed a 4th and 1, and they had 2 major coverage busts that resulted in Deshaun Jackson being wide open, and this was because Jamel Dean was hurt. And they had D. Delaney playing cornerback along with Ross Cockrell. Neither of them play for Tampa Bay anymore, and both were terrible in this game. Matthew Stafford consistently targeted D. Delaney, who gave up a 158.3 passer rating. So those are all that has changed for both sides. In terms of currently the injury report, Andrew Whitworth is questionable for the Rams. I think he'll play, but he might be hindered. I brought up Odell. Safety, health, as I said, Fuller is out, and I'm not sure about Rapp. I don't think he's going to play, but he could. In terms of the Bucs, Tristan Wirfs was the big news coming out of the Eagles game, which is why I hate 2 seeds playing in the first week. Tristan Wirfs might not play. He's the most questionable out of all of these Bucs players. He is probably, if I had to guess, he'll try to play on Sunday, but I don't know if he'll be healthy enough to play. Now, Wells is the backup right tackle. He was limited on Wednesday, so he'll be good to go, I think, if Wirfs misses the game. Ryan Jensen will play. He's tougher than shit. And also, he returned to the game and played the rest of the game versus the Eagles. And then we've got Leonard Fournette, who announced his comeback on Twitter. And then, like I said, Cyril Grayson, who's a receiver that could be handy for the Bucs. Did not practice today. Not sure if he's going to play. Now, the contingency plan for the Bucs on the offensive line is, let's say Wells doesn't play, let's say Wirfs doesn't play. What would they do? So Bruce Arians has said that Alex Cappa would play right tackle and Aaron Stinney would play right guard. Aaron Stinney played in the Super Bowl at right guard for the Bucs last year, and Alex Cappa played right tackle in college, so he's familiar with playing right tackle. Don't think that's going to happen, but just wanted to give you that information in case. And also, lastly, for the injuries, if Sean Murphy-Bunting does play for the Bucs, which I expect him to suit up, this would be the first game, listen to this, the first game this season that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have all 11 defensive starters in the lineup. Okay? Now, enough of the injuries and the personnel and all that stuff. Let's start with the Bucs defense versus the Rams offense. In 2019, let's look at this matchup in the past, right? In 2019, this was 2-3 years ago when Brady wasn't even on the team. Jameis Winston was the quarterback. This was the first year Bruce Arians and Todd Bowles coached the Bucs. Jared Goff and the Rams put up 34 points, 518 yards, and lost the game. Goff had 4 turnovers. He melted down, and that's why they only scored 34 points. This was similar in 2020. Goff turned it over twice. Both bad decisions. The Rams put up 27 points, even though they had 413 yards, okay? But this year, Bulls faced LA again. Now, that was part of it was due, as we said, a lot of it was due to personnel, which is different from the past. But the Rams had 34 points, 407 yards in week 3. So in all of the games that they've played between the Bucs and the Rams, McVay has shredded Todd Bowles, and that's just a fact. Whether the players were playing or not playing, that's just a fact. So we've got to think about that, all right? The interesting thing about the Rams is, what type of offense are we going to see from the Rams, okay? So the Rams, just for note, they ran the ball 21 times in the first half versus the Arizona Cardinals last week. 21 times, right? And personally, if I'm the Rams, I am not doing that versus Tampa Bay. If you do that versus Tampa Bay, you will lose the game. But the Rams have become a run-heavy team over the last half of the season. So the question for McVay is, do they feel like they need to run the ball to be successful, or will they lean into their pass-heavy script that they've used the last 2 years versus the Bucs? So that is kind of what we need to know. Are the Rams going to try to run the ball, or are the Rams going to go to pass heavy? Now, something that I find interesting looking at the Rams' wins and losses this year is when they play a good run defense, which the Bucs are a good run defense. They lose or they win very, very close game, right? So they lost to the Titans. They lost to the Niners twice. Those are 2 of the top defenses against the run. And they beat the Ravens, who are also a top defense versus the run, by 1 point. Now, it's important to note that a couple of these games were also on the road. We'll talk about the road a little bit later, specifically when it comes to Matthew Stafford. So will the Rams try to run it? Because the interesting thing is, the Bucs, when they've played them in the past, they've passed the ball, right? They passed the ball on 79% of first downs at that point in the season, right? But since then, they haven't come that close to that number all year, right? The closest they came was 67% to that number. So when you look at the Rams, they have shifted so far from their identity early in the season, which was pass happy. 79% first down pass. Now, in the last 2 games, they have been 18% pass and 29% pass on first down in the last 2 games. So they are a run-first team on early downs. And again, the reason I'm making a big deal about this is because of what has worked versus Tampa Bay in the past when the Rams have played them, and also what the Bucs are good at defending, and that is the run, and we know that, right? And then on top of that, you look at the games that they played the Ravens, the games they played the Niners, the games they played the Titans. They tried running the ball in those games. They didn't play like they played the Bucs. They tried running the ball, and it didn't work, and they lost, right? With the Rams running game, they're inside-outside zone. Like we talked about Shanahan, like how he kind of like started his scheme. His dad was like inside-outside zone. McVay is basically that, like from 1998. Like he doesn't do anything else. It's like inside zone or outside zone. There's no toss cracks in here, okay? We're not seeing that at all. And my question is, for the Bucs defense, are they going to like bait the Rams into trying to run the ball? Are they just going to say, F you, we're going to just put 2 safeties deep and like we're going to go light box? Because the trap that the Bucs have fallen into in those games where they've lost to the Rams is they've tried to stop the run, and they've done it, but like they were intentionally playing into the Rams and what the Rams were going to do, which was the Rams were trying to pass on the Bucs and they were still trying to stop the run. So is Todd Bowles more going to be like, you know what? I'm not going to even do that. I'm just going to like I played the Chiefs in the Super Bowl or the Bills and just be like, you know what? Let's just like F it. F you. Let's just put 2 people deep and like, we're not even going to care. Run the ball if you want to run the ball. Like, go ahead, right? Another thing that really hurt the Bucs in the past versus the Rams was screens, specifically when Bowles would blitz. And that's something that I think is very important about this game. So, how much is Bowles going to blitz? How is Bowles going to get his pressure? So, when we look at pressure is key to disrupting Matthew Stafford. We've seen this all season long. And when we look at Tampa Bay, the Bucs have only allowed 1 quarterback to hit 100 passer rating since week 5. That was Tyler Heineken, my guy, okay? Only 1 quarterback since week 5 has had 100 passer rating versus Tampa Bay, including all of their injuries in the secondary. That includes Josh Allen. Like, Josh Allen didn't even have 100 passer rating. So when you look at pressure, right? 5+ rushers for Matthew Stafford this season. 72% completion percentage, 1,031 yards, 14 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, 8 sacks. Now when we look at 4 or less rushers for Matthew Stafford, 3,855 yards, 27 touchdowns, 17 interceptions, and 22 sacks. So the guy that led the NFL in interceptions is really good versus the blitz, but when you send 4 and play coverage and make him hold the ball, he will throw you the ball. So he had 27 touchdowns, 17 interceptions, and was sacked 22 times when you sent 4 people at the quarterback. Okay? And the interesting thing about this is that we know Todd Bowles loves to blitz, right? But in this game, it's important that Todd Bowles does not blitz. Todd Bowles must send simulated pressures. Just as it was important that Todd Bowles didn't blitz Patrick Mahomes. Remember the Super Bowl? Everyone was talking about Todd Bowles can't blitz Patrick Mahomes. Todd Bowles can't blitz Patrick Mahomes. And he didn't. He did it once. He did it once. All game. And we're like, wow, that was shocking because Todd Bowles always blitzes, right? The Bucs have blitzed 41% of their snaps this season, which is by far the most in the NFL. So if Todd Bowles plays like he usually does, he's probably going to get shredded. If Todd Bowles is smart, adjusts his defense, rushes 4, there's a very good chance the Bucs slow down the Rams and actually have a very good chance of winning this game. One guy that I think could be very important with this is Richard Sherman. Let me say that again. Richard Sherman. Richard Sherman is currently the secondary coach of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Richard Sherman did not join the team until after their first meeting. Richard Sherman is very familiar with Sean McVay. Richard Sherman played for the 49ers. Richard Sherman played for the Seattle Seahawks. Okay? He is not playing in this game. He is coaching this game. I listened to Richard Sherman's podcast previewing the game. What he said is you got to hit Stafford repeatedly. You've got to put pressure on him. You've got to move him off his spot. Very generic stuff. He's not going to give anything away. But I think Sherman is going to have a hand in this game plan because when you look at the team that's beaten McVay the most, who is it? The 49ers. I don't know. I'm just saying. But Richard Sherman could have an impact on this game plan. Now, how would I attack the Rams defense? And if I'm the Rams offense, how would I attack the Bucs defense? Okay? So I think we kind of know. I would pass on early downs if I was the Rams. And I would definitely, if I'm Matthew Stafford, it's going to be interesting because I think everything with the Rams is going to be dictated on what the Bucs do, which I guess is a good thing for the Bucs defensively because you're dictating the terms, right? So I feel like if they're blitzing, you're going to get into your screens, you're going to get into more probably your play action and your crossers, right? You're going to cross them up because there's probably going to leave one-on-ones, and McVay loves to do that shit. So you're going to see that. But I feel like the Bucs, what they do is going to dictate what the Rams kind of counter with. I don't think if you're the Rams, you come out and run the ball. I don't think you do that. Now, I think you got to stay patient with it a little bit. You got to do it just enough to not let Shaq Barrett just tee off all game, and not let Bowles just like do all these crazy crap the whole time. Like, because he's definitely going to do that. Like, even if he's just sending 4, he's going to, like, send the corner from this way and the corner from that way and drop, like, 3 players from the middle. Like, he does stuff like that. We saw that versus Jalen Hurts. So, in a way, the Bucs are going to dictate what the Rams probably end up doing in this game. But I do feel like if you're the Rams, you got to feel confident that you have a couple matchups that you can count on. I think finding Devin White in coverage and attacking Devin White with Tyler Higbee or Cam Akers is a good matchup that you can go with. If you're Cooper Kupp versus basically anybody one-on-one, that's your matchup. If he's doubled, look elsewhere. Maybe you got Van Jefferson or you got OBJ one-on-one potentially elsewhere. But I think the Rams will succeed if Bowles just decides to blitz the whole time. So if you're the Bucs, how do you deploy a defense that's going to stop them? And personally, I think they got to play more man in this game. And I think they've got to play, I wouldn't have Carlton Davis. I know he's the best corner on the team. I wouldn't have him cover Cooper Kupp. I'd put him on Beckham. I would double Kupp as much as possible. Maybe you put Dean on him or you put Sean Murphy Bunting on him and then you put a safety in the middle. Maybe you play a lot of cover 1. You've got that robber safety who comes down, he plays on Kupp, and Sean Murphy Bunting's underneath. Or maybe Dean, and Dean's pressing Kupp all the time when he's on the outside because Dean's got that size advantage and the long arms. And then on the other side, I think you put Dean on Van Jefferson one-on-one. I feel like Davis and Dean can handle those matchups one-on-one easily. Like, I don't think OBJ is just going to beat on Carlton Davis all day. He might make a couple plays, but I don't think it's going to be, like, huge. I think you've got to stop Cooper Kupp. If that means you got to resort 2 people to him, then you got to put 2 people on him, personally, right? And maybe you play some cover 4s, some quarters, which typically McVay's offenses have struggled with over the years. Like, think to that Patriots Super Bowl. They play a lot of quarters in that game. So I think a lot of man, specifically cover 1, cover 2 man, cover 4, those type of matchups. And then, just try not to blitz. Have simulated pressures with 4 players, but don't blitz a ton. Maybe a couple times on 3rd and long, but not a ton. Not like when it's 2nd and 10, 2nd and 9. Don't, I wouldn't really be blitzing there. I'd only save it for specific situations. So that side of the ball is really fascinating because there's a lot of questions to be answered for this game, and it's going to be a chess match on both sides. Now, when we flip it, we go the Bucs offense, the Rams defense, right? One stat that I have is that Von Miller has 1 sack in the last 5 games straight. So Von Miller has been playing good. And the storyline that everybody is talking about is the Rams D-line and how they're going to get to Brady. Okay, that's what everybody and their mom is talking about. Doesn't matter who it is, their cat, their dog, their elephant. It doesn't matter. They're talking about Von Miller, Aaron Donald, the D-line, the O-line. No doubt that is a huge matchup, but there is so much more that goes into this side of the football. First, the Rams might be a side that I think is very misunderstood from a defensive perspective. And I don't mean that in a good or a bad way. I just mean from a scheme perspective. They're very misunderstood. People don't really understand them. When they talk about them, they just incorrectly talk about how they play defense, just in general. But the Rams have allowed the 3rd most receptions and the 4th most yards to receivers this season. Their pass defense also is pretty not very good. I mean, it ranks in the 20s. So just from a pass defense perspective, yes, they can rush the passer, but they allow yards, they allow catches, and you can create plays on them, okay? Now, from the Bucs' perspective, they've got to use all their tools at their disposal. They've got to use tempo. Like I talked about with Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady's a master. Tempo, no huddle, snap count, all that stuff. Keep those same 4 rushers on the field. Keep old Von Miller on the field because he comes off the field all the time. They sub these guys all the time. They keep them fresh. Keep them on the field, wear them down. And this specifically matters. If this game was in LA, this would be a lot harder to do. This game is in Tampa Bay, okay? So Tom Brady is going to have that offense working at a very fast pace. They're going to get to the line. They're going to keep the Rams defense in very simple coverages, and they're going to go fast, and they're going to attack, and they're going to wear down Aaron Donald. They're going to help their offensive line by doing that, right? They've got to use play action a lot in this game, I think, especially on early downs to take shots down the field. We're going to talk about why taking shots down the field is very important. I think using screens as well could help them move the ball versus the Rams because they're so aggressive and fast that they'll flow to the football or flow to one side and then you could throw a screen behind it. They're very aggressive in the pass rush. They know the number one thing they got to do is sack Tom Brady, right? So when you know that, you can just flip a little screen over the top to Gio Bernard or whoever. So those things are very important, obviously. I think the biggest matchups that the Bucs can take advantage of, there's one guy in particular. His name is Rob Gronkowski. You might have heard of him. But the Rams simply don't have any matchup. Man, zone, it doesn't matter. They don't have anybody that can cover Rob Gronkowski, period. They don't have a single player, whether it's safety, linebacker, corner. They don't have anybody. Obviously, they're not going to just put Jalen Ramsey on him because that would leave Mike Evans with 5'8" Darius Williams. So that's not going to happen. But Rob Gronkowski could have a big game here. And I expect him to have a big game here, specifically because the Rams play a lot of cover 3, and he is infamous for going down the seam and picking up massive yards down the seam with Tom Brady off play action. Again, play action. Get those D linemen. And I think the Bucs are going to have opportunities through play action with Gronk especially. So what was I talking about when I'm talking about the Rams are just very misunderstood? The Rams are misunderstood because people think that Jalen Ramsey plays like Deion Sanders. I'm not saying Jalen Ramsey isn't a great player. That is not what I'm saying. Jalen Ramsey often only plays in one position. He plays in they call it the star position, I believe, or the nickel position. He mostly plays at the nickel spot. He very, very, very rarely follows a wide receiver for the whole game. He almost never does, especially in this defense. So if you expect Jalen Ramsey to cover Mike Evans the whole game, you have not watched the Rams play all year. Because that's not what they do. They don't do that against Davante Adams. They don't do that against Mike Evans in the first game. They don't do this, okay? That would be a huge deviation. And even Mike Evans brought this up in his press conference. He said, this would be a huge deviation for me to see Ramsey. We played them. He said this. Last year, he covered me a lot. This year, that didn't happen at all because the defense has changed. There's a new coordinator. His name is Raheem Morris. This isn't Brandon Staley's defense. This is Raheem Morris's defense. Okay, so then I was like, okay, this is Raheem Morris. What has Tom Brady done when he's played Raheem Morris? Okay, Tom Brady versus Raheem Morris in his career. He's played 7 games. In those games, he's 6-1. The one loss was this season. In that game, he threw 432 yards. He had a touchdown and a rushing touchdown. He also led the team in rushing yards. Okay, but over the course of his career, 2,500 yards in 7 games. Let me say that again. 2,500 yards in 7 games. Think about that for a second. Let that stir. Do the math. 17 touchdowns, just 4 interceptions in 7 games. So under a pick per game and 2+ touchdowns per game and 350 yards passing per game, maybe more. Okay, so Brady has largely owned Raheem Morris. What type of defense does Raheem Morris play and the Rams play, therefore? They play a lot of zone coverages. You would call it, I guess, like zone match. It's not like the Eagles where the Eagles just like protect the deep pass and they play like cover 2 the whole game. Actually, the Eagles played a lot of man in the game in the playoff last week. It didn't work, but they tried. They at least tried a little bit. But the Rams, they primarily play cover 3, cover 4, cover 6. And those are primarily matching zone defenses. So it's different from the Eagles. They're not just going to give up everything underneath. You can attack them down the field. But the good thing about that match style defense is that you can dictate your matchups, right? So you can place Mike Evans on the right or the left or the slot, and you can get the right corner or the right safety to play him depending on where you align him, right? So it's different. Also, what I found very interesting about this defense, the Rams are one of the lowest man coverage teams in the NFL. Again, Ramsey doesn't play man coverage. They don't play man coverage. They play zone. They rush 4. They don't blitz very much. They blitz occasionally, but not very much. They use a variety of stunts, and they'll try to get home with 4, which is probably what the Rams should do in this game. I think that plays about right. They also don't play press coverage. They play press coverage at the league low rate. So it would be very out of character for them to switch to man and to switch to press, which would be probably the weaknesses of the Bucs right now because their receiver talent isn't that good. So what we talked about last week is when you play zone, it's mostly on the quarterback. When you play man, it's a lot on the receivers, right? Which is, again, why the Patriots suck versus man coverage, because they got no receivers who can get open. Anyways, when we talk about explosive plays, right? Los Angeles has given up 10 40-plus passing plays and 53 20-plus yarders. That isn't the worst, but they're far from the best, okay? And also, both of the Rams' safeties who are starting this year are out. So there's been some miscommunication errors from them in recent weeks. So there's the opportunity in this game for Brashad Perryman, Scotty Miller, these fast receivers for the Bucs to get over the top of the Rams and to create a couple big plays in this game and for Brady to hit these shots versus safeties that might be a little bit lost. If Brady throws a pump fake or he shows his eyes left and goes middle or right and middle or whatever, there might be the opportunity for the Bucs to hit those big plays. But in order to get big plays, you got to block, right? So I think what would be good for the Bucs is to be able to work their play action, have those tight ends in the block, and then work those vertical plays down the field when they want to go for shot plays. When we talk about the run game, so most of this is pass game stuff. I think the Bucs will primarily be passing in this game. When they run, I do believe the Bucs got a size advantage in the running game. They'll be able to push it a little bit in terms of the run game and short yardage. But I think first down will mostly be passing and things like that. I could also see the Bucs going to more tight end sets because the Rams linebackers aren't very good. They're not very athletic. They can't really run. So putting Brait, putting Howard, putting Gronk out there, especially if you don't have Tristan Wirfs, might be a good idea to block and to go out for catches. And the Rams, from a defensive perspective, they like to rush 5 players a lot to get one-on-ones for Aaron Donald, for Von Miller. So that takes a guy out of coverage, but it probably provides more pressure in a compressed pocket and one-on-one. So this could work to the Rams' favor on 3rd and long, but when we're in early downs, it's just going to allow a little bit less coverage for Brady to decipher and get the ball out. So on both sides, what the defenses typically like to do doesn't work. So when we're talking about who is going to win this game, in my opinion, it comes down to which defensive coordinator do you think is more willing to change what he does? Which defensive coordinator is smarter? Which defensive coordinator do I trust more? And ultimately, which quarterback do I think is better? And I know that's simple, and I know that the offensive line and defensive line matchups will dictate this game, but I do believe that ultimately let's look at these splits. Tom Brady at home this year has 25 touchdowns and 4 interceptions. Matthew Stafford on the road, 20 touchdowns, 11 interceptions. He has not been good on the road this year. This game is in Tampa Bay. The Bucs have been stellar at home. I think that Todd Bowles is the better DC. I think Brady is the better quarterback. And I think that is why they win this game. There are matchups that favor the Rams. Don't get me wrong. And this could very well be decided who starts faster, right? Because Tampa Bay, it's 23-0 since Tom Brady got there when they lead at halftime or they're tied at halftime. So if they're tied or they lead at halftime, the Bucs are probably going to win the game. And the same can be said about McVay. When they start fast, they're a good team. When they have to come from behind, although Stafford and Brady are both epic in those scenarios, it's going to be more difficult because then you're going to allow the Bucs pass rush, you're going to allow the Rams pass rush to get after you and to win. So I think that it comes down to Todd Bowles and Tom Brady. And I'll take those guys to win this game. In more of a defensive game a little bit, I think, than people will expect. I wanted to adjust my score. I just didn't. I probably lean towards, more of a 30-24 at this point, but I have this score being 24-20 for Tampa Bay. I think that Todd Bowles is going to have a good game here. I think he's going to be willing to change what he does. I think that the secondary pieces for Tampa Bay being back in the lineup is huge. It is massive. It is so big. And I think the Bucs have, I believe, opportunity in this game to play better defense than they have in the past. So I've got the Bucs 24-20 to win the game. I spent a lot of time on that breakdown. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know your prediction for that game. Ultra says, you know me, man. I rarely bet against Brady in big games. I think Tampa wins 30-24. Again, I'll say this, Ultra. I won't be mad at myself if the Bucs lose and I pick Tom Brady. If the Rams beat Tom Brady, I won't be mad because I picked Tom Brady because it's Tom Brady. It's just, you're stupid if you just, you're stupid at this point to not pick Tom Brady in these games. So, a lot of people are picking the Rams. I would say that probably more people are picking the Rams than the Bucs, from what I've seen. This game kind of feels a little bit like the divisional round last year with the Saints. And we talked very similarly about this game. The Bucs had to change some of the stuff that they do. They did it, and they won. Specifically on defense, right? Sometimes they're not so good at changing what they do on offense, but when it comes to defense, Todd Bowles usually has the answers. Durkan says 26-23, Stafford throws a game-losing interception because he's a choker. I mean, I could see that. I like Stafford, but I could definitely see that happening. Especially the way the Bucs defense looked last week. They look fast. They look ready to go. Singh says Tampa Bay 30-20. Rory says, hey, Mitch, Gronk's bite. Thank you, Rory. 24-17, says Anthony. I assume he means the Bucs, but I don't know. Joshua says 28-24 Rams. Packers Bucs NFC Championship, says Dylan. Would be great. Win says, I think Bucs are the least hated team in the playoffs. That's interesting. Are you sure? Because it is Tom Brady. All right. Joshua said the Rams beat them bad in the regular season. I think we talked about that. All right. Let's get to the main event, which is the Sunday night game. And I like how they put this game on Sunday night. I think that's dope. So the Chiefs are favored by 2.5, hosting the Buffalo Bills. This line has moved a little bit in favor of Buffalo. The stat that I heard earlier today was that more money Big time money is coming in on the Bills. 97% of the cash is on Buffalo, but I believe the number was 64% of the bets, which makes me think that the sharps are on the Bills in this game. Okay? I might be a little bit off on the numbers, but it was something like 97% of the money is on Buffalo, and like 64% of the bets is on Buffalo. So, let's take a look at the tail of the tape. Okay, so the Bills, number 10 offensively and number 1 at everything else. Defense, yards per play, points per drive. Like I said, statistically best team in the NFL. Kansas City, number 3 offense, number 24 defense. They've improved since this last matchup. Yards per play, 17th. Points per drive, 6th. Actually, when these two teams played the first time, the Chiefs were number 1 in points per drive. Okay? Just to point that out. So their offense has actually statistically gotten worse, but they have played better down the stretch. All right, so let's break down the game. Starting with the main thing. So this game is actually kind of odd in terms of weather. So you would anticipate that this game would be very cold, right? Snow, maybe, wind. Well, as far as it looks right now, in Arrowhead is expected to be 35 degrees, which isn't all that bad. No wind at all in Kansas City. So what it looks like is that this game is going to be pretty mild and pretty nice for the most part, which leans obviously towards offense. When I look at this game, I see what looks like Brady versus Manning 2.0. Like this feels like Brady versus Manning 2.0. That might be a high bar to clear, but it does feel like this is the new Brady versus Manning rivalry. Allen versus Mahomes. And some people have said that these are the 2 best players in the NFL. I don't agree, but they're 2 of the best young quarterbacks in the game for sure. Both of these teams are pretty darn healthy. We'll talk about the players that are missing, but across the board, there's not many missing from either side. And I would say that both of these defenses are going to have to play above their heads. This is a tough matchup for both of these defenses. So let's take a look at the first game as we have with all the rematches. In the first game, the Bills won 38-20. Okay, the Chiefs fell to 2-3, and after this game, the Bills were touted as the best team in the NFL. Rightfully so. The game was 31-13 in the third quarter. I specifically remember about this game the emotion that the Bills played with. This, in a similar way to the Rams, was very emotional for those two teams, and the Bills played with a lot of emotion. They really wanted revenge from the AFC Championship, and they got what they wanted, okay? Also in this game, there was a lot of rain in the second half that impacted the Chiefs' ability to come back. Early in the game, though, the Chiefs did take the lead 10-7 with 10 minutes left in the first half, but the game totally flipped from there on out. Josh Allen, in my opinion, has played a lot better and is just generally a lot better player than he was back then. There was a very weak roughing the passer call in favor of the Bills when it was 31-20. Allen threw an interception on the play, and it got returned because of the the roughing the passer. That could have helped the Chiefs come back, but it didn't. It actually helped the Bills go on a touchdown drive and secure the game, 38-20. When we look at the stats, 10 penalties for 103 yards for the Bills. They had a lot of penalties in this game. The Chiefs had 7 for 55, 17 total penalties. The Chiefs won the time of possession and had 9 more first downs in the game, which is interesting. The Chiefs fumbled twice and threw 2 interceptions. They also forced a punt on 1 fumble. The Bills were forced to punt after getting one of the fumbles from the Chiefs, so it didn't really account for anything. But they weren't able to capitalize on it. But it was due to penalties as well. So either way you look at it. Allen had over 370 total yards. Zach Moss had 11 rushes in the game, which would not happen this time around. Isaiah McKenzie was not involved at all. He's going to be involved in this game. Patrick Mahomes had 54 attempts. He also had 61 rushing yards on 8 attempts. So he had how many? 62 total touches in the game. And the game was also at Kansas City, which there is carryover because in the other two matchups, right, San Fran, that game's now in Lambeau, and in the Tampa game, that game's now in Tampa instead of in LA, right? So this game is in the same venue that it was played earlier in the year. In terms of who played and who didn't in that game, the Bills had Tre'Davious White. They don't have Tre'Davious White anymore, who he, majority of the time, covered Tyreek Hill. He did an okay job at best. I felt like he still lost that matchup. The Bills did not have, though, Matt Milano, which is a very important player for the Bills' defense. On the other hand, the Chiefs had no Charvarius Ward. Daniel Sorensen played safety. He was awful. There was no Melvin Ingram, no Chris Jones, and Willie Gay didn't play as much at this point in the season. So, those are all the things you got to know. The Bills' offense versus the Chiefs' defense. I have no idea how the Chiefs' defense is going to stop the Bills. I'm just going to be honest with you. I have no idea. I don't think they're going to stop them. And the reason why is Josh Allen is going nuclear right now. And the Chiefs' defense, we've seen them when they play good offenses. They certainly can be passed on. They can be ran on. The ball can be moved, right? The Chargers move the ball. The Bengals move the ball down the stretch. We saw people move the ball on them. Here's the thing with the Chiefs, right? The way the Chiefs like to play defense, they like to play man. The Patriots tried to play man. That didn't work. Take it from a Patriots fan. It didn't work, okay? It's not going to work. The Chiefs expect it to work. The Bills, they run all these crazy crossing routes and they have all these man beaters. They have great receivers. They've got 5 good receivers on this team. And the Chiefs just can't cover. They have to, because they're going to probably have to double Diggs, because if they don't, he's going to go off. If they double Diggs, there's going to be matchups for McKenzie and for Davis and for Beasley that are probably advantageous to the Bills. So from a man coverage perspective, it's going to be very difficult for the Chiefs to play their game and to win. Now, Spagnuolo also loves to blitz, which doesn't always work versus Josh Allen very well. It can work, but it can also give up a massive play if Josh Allen escapes the pocket or runs or breaks a tackle or whatever. Now, one way that you could try to confuse Josh Allen is potentially by looking at Todd Bowles' scheme and what he did versus Josh Allen in the first half, which tended to work. But then the Bills adjusted with some power runs from Josh Allen that worked against the Bucs, which could also work versus the Chiefs. That is an area that the Bills have improved a ton, is running with Josh Allen. And that area, I think Singletary's also played very good down the stretch as a receiver and a runner. And Isaiah McKenzie is just an X factor that they didn't have in that first game. That's going to be something that I think helps them a ton. Another factor is if you try to play these zone coverages and rush 4, Allen's going to be able to buy time, and he's very patient. He'll take what the defense gives him. He will make you pay. The Patriots tried this as well. It didn't fucking work. I'm just going to say. Okay? So the Bills, whatever the Chiefs do, it's not going to work. This is just a game where the Chiefs are going to have to score more points than the Bills. Okay? And Knox. Someone said, and Knox. Knox is going to get open. I don't know who's covering Knox in this game, because Daniel Sorensen used to be the tight end stopper, more like tight end get open guy. But Dawson Knox is somebody that had a huge game in the first game that I don't know if the Chiefs have an answer for him in this game either. So, in my opinion, from the Chiefs' perspective, what they should try to do is just play aggressive. Like, go for it. Like, I think the Chiefs should just play on variance. Like, you know that you have to score to win, right? But try to help your offense in this game. Like, try to blitz and get a turnover. Like, try to strip Allen or try to sack him, right? Like, try to get a few plays in this game that will help get the ball for your offense. Because I think if the Chiefs try to play like zone, or if they try to play man too deep, like, maybe that could work situationally, but I think the general game plan for the Chiefs should be playing aggressive, sending heat, trying to get some turnovers or trying to make some mistakes from Allen, and not trying to play like this, like, oh, you're going to make a mistake by us just sitting back in zone. That doesn't work versus Allen anymore. He's too smart. It's not going to work, okay? He's gotten better as a player. It's not going to work. So, personally, I think that is the way for the Chiefs to go. Is just like, in those big moments on third down, just go for it. Like, see if Ward can play man on the outside. See if Fenton and these guys can hold up for a play or two. Because with man coverage, there's also a lot of variance, right? You can have some really good reps where you play really well. On top of that, I feel like the Bills did a really good job when I watched the first game of hitting the Chiefs with some downfield passing concepts, specifically some double moves. Diggs hit them with a double move for a big play. Sanders hit them with a double move for a touchdown. So both of those things might be useful in this game. Again, you might be able to see that. But yeah, I just think it's going to be really hard for the Chiefs, no matter what they try to do on defense. I just don't know if they have the players to be able to slow down what the Bills are going to be able to throw at them. On the flip side, it's very similar. The Chiefs, I think they have less advantages than the Bills offense does. I think the Bills defense is a lot more sound. It's better coached, in my opinion, and it has better players. The Bills defense is better. It's more talented. They've got a deep defensive line. They've got a rotation of rushers that are talented. Their linebackers are fast. They're good in coverage, especially Matt Milano. Their safeties are excellent, Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer. The weakness of the Bills is their cornerbacks. And the Bills aren't going to get away with playing man coverage like they did versus New England. It's not going to work because the Chiefs are going to shred them with Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill and maybe even Mecole Hardman. The fact of the matter is the Chiefs aren't the Patriots. But the Bills know that, right? They're not going to come out and play man. They typically play zone anyways. So, and typically their zone of choice is cover 6. So, what cover 6 is, if you don't know, is basically cover 2 to one side and cover 4 to the other side. And a lot of it is like, it's like match. It's like turns into man sometimes, right? And, but basically, I think that Travis Kelce is the guy that needs to win in this game. I understand that Tyreek Hill is going to have a matchup and you're going to find ways for him to get that. But I feel like wherever Hill is going to be, it's going to be like the Bills are going to align themselves on the cover 2 side, right? So if Hill's on the right, the cover 2 side is going to be to the right. If Hill's on the left, cover 2 side is going to be on the left. So basically that means that the quarter side of the cover 6 is going to be on the side of Travis Kelce, because that's what the Chiefs do. A lot of the times they play like trips, which is 3 receivers to one side and another receiver to the other. And they're going to solo Travis Kelce and have him win his matchup. If he doesn't win his matchup, they're going to lose. Just going to be honest with you. If he doesn't win his matchup, they're going to lose. If he wins his matchup, they can eat up inside and they can move the ball piece by piece, play by play. The Chiefs have also been very good with their screen game as of late. That could be useful. The Bills are a pretty good team at defending screens overall. But I think you can get a few plays. I think Mahomes has to definitely be dangerous with his legs like he was in the first outing. Be willing to scramble, be willing to extend plays. I do think, though, the Bills' defense could have an opportunity here to put some pressure in situations more with 4. I think Orlando Brown could struggle in this game because the Bills' pass rushers are very finesse and quick, and they can attack you off the edge, right? This is a team that ranked first in pressure rate, and they don't blitz a ton, right? So understanding that, this is a pretty good D-line. Like, the Bills' D-line is fast, they're athletic, they're quick, they're smaller, which is why they're sometimes overpowered in the run game. But the Chiefs, that's something where the Chiefs, the biggest advantage they have, the Chiefs, is if the Bills' defense goes light, which they're going to go light, they can run the ball on you. They didn't in the first game. They've gotten better since, though. They were very bad at running versus light personnel in the first game when they played the Bills. This time, they've got to be better. Jerick McKinnon's got to be better. The O-line's got to be better. And that is a way that the Chiefs can keep Allen on the sidelines and work the clock and win the time of possession, is through, some nice runs against light personnel, getting that 4-5 run every once in a while, 4 or 5 yard run every once in a while, and then working Travis Kelce, and then eventually you're going to hit him with a big play with Tyreek Hill. So there are some matchups that I like on both sides. I'm going to see what Matt Milano does. I'm not sure if he's going to cover Travis Kelce, or if they're going to ask Jordan Poyer to cover Travis Kelce, or if they're going to put that Neal kid. One of those guys is going to be asked to cover him in this game. So overall, I see a shootout. I see a game where both quarterbacks and both offenses move the football, pass the football, and have success. And I think it could come down to, it sounds cliche, it could come down to whoever has the ball last wins. And when I'm thinking about this type of game, I think about a couple things. I think the Bills' defense is better than the Chiefs. I think it's more consistent, and I think they have proven that over the course of this season, even without Tre'Davious White. I think that Josh Allen is playing better, more consistent football than Patrick Mahomes. If Mahomes was playing better than Allen, I would lean towards the Chiefs. But the fact of the matter is, what I've seen from Josh Allen right now is ridiculous. I cannot pick against him at this moment. He's playing too good. And the fact of the matter is, Mahomes is just playing more inconsistent than he has in the past. And those inconsistencies could lead to the Bills in their advantage. So I think the Bills have the better quarterback right now, the better defense right now. I think that's why they win the game just slightly, 31-27. They match up well. They both match up well. It's a good game. It should be a one-score game. I don't believe it's going to be a blowout for either team, not even close. I don't believe that the Bills are going to be able to replicate the blowout of the first time. I don't see an AFC Championship from 2020. The Bills are a much better team. I think that Allen is the better player right now. And in a shootout, that's what it comes down to for me. So I'm going to take Buffalo 31-27 in this football game. There it is. My predictions for divisional round. Let me know yours in the comments section. Let me hear it. Let me hear it. Why are they favored? Because they've been the proven winners. The proven winners. That's why. And they're at home. Anthony's got 45-17 Buffalo. Steve says the difference with the Bills from last year is better rushing, better guards. Allen is more varied, much better tight end play. Their receivers are healthy, no Trey White. With Kansas City, the primary difference is the offensive line. That's fair. Steve says 38-31 Bills. Afix says Bills 38-27. Durkant's got 37-20 Chiefs. Yes, you did miss the stream, Jeremy. Joseph says 35-31 Chiefs. Lamb's got 31-27. Bills. Chiefs 33, Bills 30. Dylan says he's got Buffalo. He thinks their defense could be the main difference. Greg says 28-28 tie, which is impossible. Nathan says Ward shuts down Diggs for some reason. Look at the 3 times they played each other. Win says my predictions, Chiefs, Titans, Packers, Rams. Joshua says 35-24 Bills. 60-10 Bills, says Samuel. Afik says bold prediction, Bills won't punt. Natasha says 33-27 Bills. Rut says Bills still won the AFC East for the next decade. I still own. Paul says I stand by 37-24 Buffalo. Trek says 49-10 Buffalo. Wow! All right, guys. That is it for me. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed, don't forget to Gronk spike that like button. Check out my Patreon, link in the description. You can find our full breakdown on BLV versus Consensus on Friday with me, Ultra, Durkant, Lenny. And you can also get my bets every week for $5 for the rest of the playoffs. This month, $5 for the month. All of my bets, which can help you win more than $5. Check that out. Subscribe. Cryptic Ninja says, Super Chat Hype Train, anyone? Yes, Super Chat hype Train. If anyone wants the Super Chat, I'll give you a couple minutes. Win says, good stream, Mitch. Gronk spiked it. See you later. Thank you. Natasha loves popsicles. Greg says, what do I do now? I don't know. Steve says, good night. Amazing analysis of all the teams. Good work. Thank you, Steve. Appreciate that. Greg says, ice cream time. Good night, Natasha. All right, good night, everybody. Have a good one. Thanks for watching. I'm out. Peace. Enjoy the games. Peace. Best bets tomorrow.